Welcome everyone to Webinar Wednesdays. I'm June Rawl. I'm with Phil Anderson and Ronald Cruz, and we are so happy that you were able to participate in this webinar today. The ELPS, what they are and how to use them. This webinar is intended to be a recap of the trainings that we've done across the state. But those of you who didn't attend the workshop, you're going to get some good information here as well. First and foremost, I just want to shout a big thank you to all of the host sites and all of the participants who were able to participate in the workshops that we did. The evaluations were just phenomenal, so thank you so much for that. The Department of Education and IPDA really appreciates your feedback and your expertise in what you were able to deliver. So for today, I'm going to tell you that it's going to be like a quick update on the objectives and some takeaways that happen at the workshops. And we're going to have you reflect. So we're going to really ask you to go into that Q&A button and give us some of your reflections. So you know that the training facilitators were Ron Cruz, myself, and Phil Anderson. Here's where you're going to type in your Q&A questions. So just go to that tab, type it in, and we will be answering them throughout the webinar today. Your microphones are muted, so you are in listen-only mode, so you must put those questions and those comments in that Q&A. The agenda for today, we're going to hear from Phil Anderson from the Department of Education. We're going to review some of those big takeaways like the guiding principles and the standards, and we're going to go over that as well as the differentiated piece and scaffolding. And we heard a lot about the lesson planning segment that you had, so we really look forward to seeing those lesson plans that you've developed and send them our way so we can get them out to everyone else. So now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Phil, and he's going to provide for you some updates from the Department of Education and some feedbacks. Phil?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, June. It's a real pleasure to join you on this call today, and it's been a pleasure to hear from different parts of the state, those programs that have participated in the ELP Standards workshops, and the enthusiasm that everyone has shown toward beginning to learn and about how to use them in the classroom and learn about what they are. So, as you know, the ELP standards were released by the U.S. Department of Education in October 2016, and they were prepared for all states to use them in developing our own state curriculum framework for adult ESOL students. And most states around the country are already beginning to write their curriculum and redo their standards for next year, and Florida is one of those. So I'm beginning right now with a team of experts in ESOL around the state to revise our adult ESOL curriculum frameworks in a way to integrate and incorporate the ELP standards. We have to finish our work by December and turn them over to the State Board of Education for their review and approval. The State Board of Education usually approves them in April or May of the next year. However, we always put the draft form of the new revised standards on the DOE website in January of every year. So January next year, you should be able to find on our DOE website the newly revised adult ESOL curriculum frameworks that will have the ELP standards incorporated within them. And if there are any questions that you might have regarding the process and the upcoming changes that will be coming for adult ESOL frameworks, feel free to put something in the chat box there, and we'll try to respond as best we can. I'm really impressed with the ELP standards myself, and I have a chart of them on the wall in front of, right beside my computer, and I look at them frequently. I even created a little chart that has the first letter of each standard to help me memorize them more easily. And I'm more and more impressed with the quality and the content of these standards themselves. So I've been pretty busy just trying to study them and create some documents that help me to know more about them and be able to get ready to put them into our curriculum frameworks. So as we go on throughout the year until through the year, I'd be happy to entertain any comments or suggestions from any of you, as well as questions about the ELP standards. So pretty much that's about what I have to say. I would like to make a blanket statement, I guess, regarding the scope of the standards. That they start with the level 1 ESOL. In Florida, we call level 1 foundations level, and they go up to advanced level and beyond. And there might be some concern in the state that we are starting to, or that we might be neglecting those lower level ESOL students, those first level students that some of them may have had little opportunity for formal education in their home country, and they seem to be far away from attaining the possibility of entering a CTE program or college or workplace readiness. And we at the state level feel that these students are extremely important, and we are not abandoning them in any way, shape, or form. Those students are always included in everything we do, and they're very important to us. As we know, there might be some other students in the ESOL programs that simply don't have a desire to get a job. They don't have a need to get a job. And there may be others whose life situations prevent them from even being able to work. And so those students also are very important in our ESOL program. ESOL is what learning a language for whatever purpose the students want to learn it. When I was a teacher, I used to tell students that I had a key in my pocket that could open many, many doors for them, and the key was the English language. And I told them that I really didn't have a concern for what kind of door they wanted to open, that this key would allow them to open the door that they wanted to open. And that's still the same way for all of our ESOL students around the state, that we're here to serve them in whatever way they want to use the English language for their own improvement and betterment and their own purposes. So please feel reassured and feel rest assured that that we at the state office feel that all students are worthy of giving every bit of our effort and work to serve them in any way we can to help them learn English. And I guess that's about all the comments I have for now.
Well, Phil, thank you so much. We always appreciate hearing from you and your words. The documents that Phil referred to are going to be uploaded to the IPDAY website after the webinar. You'll be able to view this recording session and the documents of today, and also these supplemental documents that Phil talked about. And they're really very interesting and really helpful documents that I think you'll really be able to use. Okay, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ronald Cruz, who is going to take us into the guiding principles. Ron?
Thank you very much, June. Can everybody hear me? Very good. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar Wednesdays. I'm going to start off by talking about just a brief review of our guiding principles. This is one of the topics that we covered extensively in our in our workshops, and I want to be able to talk to you and review these and see how everything's been going with these guiding principles as you implement. So as you may know, a lot of the people that are in this webinar have attended our face-to-face workshops. We have just finished conducting our last face-to-face workshop for the academic year, which we did one in Orange County in Orlando, Florida at Orange Technical Center. And then we're going to restart a new round of trainings in the fall as we start our new school year. So with that said, let's talk about these guiding principles. June, if we can go to the next page, please.
You know what? My page is frozen. Joseph, I can't go to the next page.
No worries. Ron, did you want to start to present? Can you put on?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, June, stop sharing. Ron will take over share session.
Okay.
Please be patient 1 second. We'll have it back online in 1 second, please.
Second.
I apologize for this inconvenience.
Right. If I am on the, I should share my screen.
Correct.
Now, and desktop share screen. Good, great. Are you all seeing this now? The guiding principle slide?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the guiding principles really quick. Just a review. I'm not going to go all the way in depth with these guiding principles as we have covered them in great detail in the face-to-face workshop. So right now I'm just going to read them all to you and then talk about certain things about the guiding principles that may or may not have been shared in the face-to-face workshops. So first of all, these guiding principles form the foundations and the pillars of the English language proficiency standards. So people that have met and sat down together to put together the English language proficiency standard have considered the strengths and areas for improvement in the areas of ESOL. So, and also incorporated how adult students learn and capitalize on their strengths. First of all, one of the things that they indicated in the guiding principles is that adult ESOL students have the potential to meet state-adopted challenging academic standards. And when they talk about this, the challenging academic state standards, this is what we're referring to as the college and career readiness standards for adult basic education. So with the proper supports, with the right amount of differentiation, and with the effort of the teacher in instructing the content to the students, our ESOL students will have the potential to meet these challenging academic standards. The second guiding principle is for adult ESOL learners representing a diverse population of learners. And that's really true from all of the workshops that I've conducted throughout the state of Florida. 100% of the teachers that I've attended have said that they have such a diverse population of learners. We have shifted from a majority Hispanic or Spanish-speaking population to like a wide variety of adult ESOL learners. And within the Spanish-speaking population, there is still a great level of diversity in terms of which nationality or which country they come from. And there's subtle differences in their languages as well, such as the Spanish in Mexico is not the same as the Spanish for Cuba, and not entirely. You know, and then it's not entirely the same for the people that speak Spanish in Brazil, so or Portuguese in particular. So that's something to take note, and that's something that we need to draw upon, that the diverse population of learners makes our ESOL classroom such a wealth of resource and such an enjoyable group to teach. Third guiding principle is ELL's funds of knowledge are a resource for their learning. And 100% I can say that as well. Of the people that have attended the face-to-face workshop, in the ones that I've conducted throughout the state, and I'm sure Phil can share the same thing, is that a lot of you are already using the experience, the background knowledge, or the prior knowledge of your students as a springboard to teaching them the English language. May it be their profession in their native country, some of which are coming into the United States with advanced degrees such as engineering, philosophy, theology, such a lot of people are coming in advanced medical degrees such as doctors and nurses and physicians. So those funds of knowledge is a great wealth of resource for teachers to use in the classroom, because you can use that information to encourage students or to motivate students to read, to write, to speak. So because they already have the content, all you have to provide them is that English language or that language tool in order to be able to communicate. Fourth, social language plays an important role in ELL's English language acquisition process. So if it's not already happening, I could tell you for a fact, you cannot teach English in per se without allowing your students to talk to each other or to communicate with one another or communicate with you. Because in order for you to have to acquire the language, you have to have a way to practice. So, and I talk about this a lot. We've got some really great ESOL programs on the computer, but that should not and will not replace the authenticity of face-to-face or one-on-one discussions or discourse. So allow yourself to provide some social language to happen in the classroom in order to strengthen English language acquisition. Number 5, there are 3 key instructional advances that form the basis of state-adopted content standards for English language arts in adult education that ELLs must access. And they were referring to the 3 key instructional advances that form the foundations of the college and career readiness standards. And we went through in great detail talking about this in the face-to-face workshop. Number 6, adult ELLs must be able to successfully engage in a wide variety of informational text. So if you're not already doing it, we need to increase the amount of informational text that we introduce or use in our classroom, because only in that way the students can master high-level, challenging academic content. Academic content come to these students in the form of informational text. A lot of the things that they encounter in the workplace, in the real world, at home, in their communities, all of the texts that they interact with are informational in form. Number 7, scaffolding is an essential tool to facilitate ELL's acquisition of language and content. So therefore, this just underlines that fact that they can't do it alone. They would need the support of the teacher to move them from complete dependence to the teacher to complete independence. You must, in introduction of various skills and proficiencies, or in teaching each of the standards, you must provide the necessary scaffolds, the necessary supports, and in addition to that, the necessary differentiation to reach all learners in the classroom in their acquisition of the language. Number 8, ELLs with disabilities will have specific instructional needs, and that's true. A lot of the teachers that I've encountered with in our face-to-face workshop share that they have students that have mental or physical disabilities that's even making it very difficult for them to teach the language. But what I also found out is adult ESOL teachers throughout the state, they are very resourceful. They do not turn these students away. They actually take a special spot or they take the spotlight in the class in terms of overcoming these physical disabilities and mental disabilities in order to become star students in the class. And you usually are, draw a great deal of experience and put in a great deal of experience to them. Yes, it will require a great level of accommodation and also creativity on the part of the adult ESOL teacher, but the reward, the outcome is very rewarding to both parties, both the teachers and the student themselves. And even in the class, what I found out is in certain classes where we have students with disabilities, students celebrate the success specifically of those students with disabilities. We have students from Haiti that have been amputated in our program, and they are the most diligent. They come to school every day, and they're the most loyal students ever, and they're the sweetest ones. They are the ones that you don't want to give up with. You know, you want to give them and put all their attention to, because although they cannot move and are not very mobile inside the classroom, they're able to overcome those and still learn the language, and without having to fully participate in some of the kinesthetic activities that we do in class. Number 9, multimedia technology aligned to the ELP standards for adult education should be integrated into instruction. So this just underlines and again re-emphasizes the importance of the use of technology, and not just one type of technology, but multimedia technology. May it be a PowerPoint presentation, a video, an audio bite, or an audio book, or a printed text on a website, pictures. Those types of multimedia technology are very much accessible to us, even to our students. A lot of our students already have smartphones and have data plans already where they can access information immediately. Rarely do I have to find a student that have to give a physical dictionary because they have Google Translate as an app on their phone. Or they can always tap on their partner and say, well, can you search for this word for me? And they're looking for those meanings and are able to communicate in class with the help of multimedia technology. I could say for the most part, in majority of the teachers that I've encountered throughout the state, they shared how important the technology plays in their role. Now, that's not to say that everybody in adult education are blessed to have technology in their classroom. Technology does not have to be high-tech. You don't have to have a computer software. There's what we call low-tech type of technologies, things that you can mimic a technology like drag and drop or matching that you can do with the use of the computer. You can do that with cutout pieces of paper. So do not, be discouraged because you do not have access to technology. Let's say you teach at the corrections, or you teach at a facility where you don't have all of the necessary equipment or tools to use technology in your classroom. Do not be discouraged, because all this says is that it plays an important role, but it's not a do or die that if you don't have technology, then your students are not going to learn English. That's not true, because we didn't have technology, when maybe the technology we have right now, we didn't have them 10 years ago. So we didn't have to Google Translate back in 1990s, but they still learned English. We still had immigrants that learned the English language and enjoyed and are now very proficient in the language without the use of technology. So it's not a necessity. It's just underlining the fact that it is a very powerful and useful tool that teachers should harness. And then lastly, academic language instruction should be incorporated in all content lessons, including mathematics and science. And just like I said in our face-to-face workshops, you don't have to be a math major. You don't have to teach algebra. You don't have to teach biology or anatomy or physics. That's not what this is talking about. They're referring to the habits of mind and all of the mathematical practices that are emphasized in the college and career readiness standards should already be incorporated or integrated in your daily classroom instruction. Just basic mathematics of just basic fractions or basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, for basic operations in mathematics. But most importantly, not just that, but also just solving problems in general. Solving problems does not have to be numeric. They could be solving a real life problem where they have to figure out the fastest way to get from point A to point B using map. That does not require a lot of numbers, or may not require numbers at all. You're just estimating distances using the map and measurement maybe, but just teaching the students to become a little bit more resourceful and persistent in solving real world problems. By doing that, you're already building the foundations that will make them very successful in tackling academic content when we teach them those content in college and career readiness, using the college and career readiness standards. So with that, I've just given you a brief overview of the guiding principles that form the foundations of the English language proficiency standards. Now I'm going to turn the question back to you. So these are the 2 questions that I have for you. You can already go ahead and type your answers by hitting on the the Q&A tab on your screen. You can click on it. A window will pop up. You can type the question. You can type the answer, and I'll be able to see your answers immediately. And then June, me and Phil and even Joseph could be answering some of your questions as we move forward. But I'm not going to stop to wait for you to enter your answer. So I'm going to move on, and I'm going to revisit back these slides to see and refer and relate your answer to these questions as we move forward. So feel free to start clicking on the Q&A button, typing in your answer to these questions. How do you see the adult ESOL students you work with reflected in these shared beliefs? Do you share the same beliefs and the same practices that I have shared with you when I was going over the 10 guiding principles? What do these principles mean for you in your daily instruction? So if you're not already doing some of these practices, how could you incorporate, how could you tweak the way you do things in class in order to incorporate some of, if not all, majority of these guiding principles? So so I'm going to be anticipating your responses in these two questions. And I'm going to move on, and I'm going to, as I'm waiting for you to type your answers to those two questions, I also want to go over the ELP standards real quick. So we did cover in great detail the 10 English language proficiency standards, and there's only 10 of them, and the 10 could be classified according to receptive, productive, and interactive, and then some are linguistic. And so from that point of context, we can understand what each standard is focusing on. So I'm just gonna read to you the ELP standards, just give some brief overview of what each standard is, just to form a quick review of what we've discussed in our workshops. And then I'm gonna pose some questions to just reflect on how we've incorporated this. Have you incorporated it already or not? So first, ELP and ELL can construct meaning from oral presentations and literary and informational texts through level appropriate listening, reading, and viewing. So this means that the students must be able to gain some understanding and communicate the meaning of certain things. And it can look different between a foundation level student and a college and career readiness ESOL student. In your lower level, it could look like just showing pictures and identifying a particular color of that picture, or describing that picture with words that they already know. So constructing meaning could look very differently at various levels, and that's why we had to look at the 5-level descriptors to understand how each one looks at the various levels, learning levels of ESOL. Number 2, participate in level appropriate oral and written exchanges of information, ideas, and analysis in various social and academic contexts, responding to peer, audience, reader comments, and questions. So one of the things that I've re-emphasized in this is that there has to be some type of exchange, oral and written exchange of information. We're drawing off of the social interaction component, or the social interaction factor of learning the language. So students at various levels of ESOL should be participating in oral and written exchanges of information, maybe writing on the board, drawing a picture, or sending an email or leaving a voicemail on various levels of ESOL. Number 3, speak and write about level appropriate complex literary and informational texts. Students must be able, after reading some informational text, so it could be even literary text, students must be able to write about it. May be, okay, provide the essential information, the what, why, when, who, where, how, those types of things. Or it could be as complex as, what is the topic sentence? What is the reading all about? So students must be able to speak about it or write about it at this particular standard. Next is construct level appropriate oral and written claims and support them with reasoning and evidence. So meaning, not only should students be able to provide just an answer to the teacher, the student must be able to provide a support. Where did you find that? Where in the text did you find that? Who in the text said that? What did the author say to support your reasoning? What did the author place in the text that supported his reasoning? So this plays into a role. As you do these exercises more frequently, students are more equipped to be skilled in attacking and comprehending more complex texts when they go in and take the GED prep courses. Moving on, number 5, conduct research and evaluate and communicate findings to answer questions or solve problems. So in this particular standard, students are not necessarily conducting like a formal research. A research could be asking somebody, it could be asking somebody a question that could be answered by yes or no. For your foundations level students, it could be a simple thumbs up, thumbs down, or they go to one side of the room whether they agree or disagree to a particular topic. Or it could be just a feeling. How do you feel? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Now, as you move on to the various level, and you go higher into the level descriptor, as you move on to the 5th level descriptor of the ELP standards, the cognitive complexity of this particular standard should increase. So therefore, the level of research, the level of specificity in the information that your students provide must be much more comprehensive as they move from level 1 descriptor to a level 5 descriptor. Number 6, analyze and critique the arguments of others orally and writing. I could just tell you for a fact, I've done a lot of the ABE and GED workshops in the TABE test, and also, in the upcoming TABE test and the current GED test series. There's a lot of questions that require students to look at somebody's response and provide an answer, or tease out the supporting details, or provide the general, the main idea of what somebody says or what somebody wrote. Or in mathematics, they would already provide the student with a problem that's completely worked out, where one step is missing, or there's an incorrect step, and the student has to figure out which step was missing, or which step they made an error, and they have to find it. And if students are not used to analyzing and critiquing arguments, reasoning, solutions of others, both orally and in writing, then we're putting them at a disadvantage when they move on to these higher levels of adult education, or as they move through their career pathway. Number 7, adapt language choices, purpose, task, and audience when speaking and writing. So this just means that students must be able to exercise choice of word, use the purpose of the purpose or the task to direct the way how they will compose their writing, pick the audience on how they're going to be able to speak. So I talk about this in the workshops a lot, that how a student one key example is how a student speaks in front of their friends. Should not be the same way as they do if they are in a job interview. In a job interview, when you're speaking with your friends, it's more formal. You use a little bit more colloquial and slang languages when you speak. You may even be speaking in that situation in your native language, or the student's native language. Whereas when you're in an interview, you use a more formal tone, and a little bit more respectful, entirely polite in terms of responses, and the choices of words are very clear, and to communicate how well or how much as an applicant or the student wants the job, and why the student can guarantee and prove that he or she is the best person for the job. Number 8, determine the meaning of words and phrases in oral presentations, literary and informational texts. So in this particular standard, students, is very similar to number 1 ELP standards, but this one is focusing more on the literal meaning of words and certain phrases. So when I say, because the English language, you can have a word that could mean many, many things. And so the students must be able to identify and determine which meaning is more appropriate for that particular word based on the context of the sentence or the structure or where it is, where that word falls in the sentence. Number 9, create clear and coherent level appropriate speech and text. So that one is focusing on how clear and focusing on how the student can construct sentences that are very smooth, not very choppy. If students can construct sentences or speech that is more coherent, meaning more interconnected, or the flow of ideas and the flow of information that they're communicating is flowing very smoothly. And then lastly, demonstrate the command of the conventions of the English language to communicate in level appropriate speech and writing. So this one is focusing more on the linguistic component, focusing on the grammar structures, the grammar rules, the format and the syntax of the sentences. Knowing all of those nuances and rules and guidelines that form the foundation of the English language is also very important to be able to be taught to students. So talked in there, I'm going to revisit some of your some of your responses on the previous 2 questions that I've asked, but now I'm going to pose you 2 more questions. Have you started implementing some of the standards in your planning and instruction? If so, what did you find out? Were you successful? Was it difficult? I mean, I expect some level of difficulty or some level of challenge on the part of the teachers, because this is something that's maybe entirely new for you. And share us how it went. Just briefly talk about how it went. What did you find out? What things do you want to improve on? Or how best can you prepare for the implementation of the standards come beginning of the school year next year in August? If you have not started implementing the standards, I would like to know if there are any concerns that you have. What is preventing you from attempting to integrate 1 or 2 a few of these standards early on in your classroom? So I'm going to look at some of your responses here on the
Ron, you have a response in the chat from Dana Foster.
Okay. So Dana Foster. All right, so I'm going to read off Dana Foster's response. Thank you, June, for pointing that out. According to Dana Foster, the question for number 1 is, the students are not solidly in one level in all skills. I have students whose speaking and listening skills are advanced, but their reading and writing skills are just at a high beginning level. This presents a challenge in differentiating instruction. That is very true, and I'm going to respond to that. And feel free to jump in, June or Phil, as well. So according to Dana, you don't really truly have a homogeneous class per se. So you find yourself, okay, they are labeled at a particular level, because of their CASA score, and then, they come to your class and it's like, no, not really. These students should be really at a higher or at a lower level than they are tested. Like, the test sometimes doesn't accurately measure their communication skills or their English language proficiency. So in this case, what we suggested in our workshop is not really differentiating by levels. So let's just say you have in some cases I have a low beginning, high beginning, low intermediate, high intermediate. So I have 4 different levels in the class. What we don't want you to do is to create a lesson plan for each particular level. That's not what we want you to do. In our face-to-face workshop, we introduce to you a very user-friendly lesson plan template where you have to just split your class into 2. Split your class into your high achieving or high performing or high level students, and then you got your low group as well. And then you just have to differentiate amongst those 2 groups. So let's say, for example, they're reading a particular text. You can differentiate by context. I'm going to go into differentiation a little bit further as we go into the slides. But just to answer this question, you can vary the text. You can have a high word count, same content text for your high group, and then you can have a low word count big font, more pictures type of text on the same type of context for your low group. So that in that case, they're learning the same content, but they're receiving some accommodation and some differentiation at a particular level that's more appropriate to them. What we do not want to do is to have everybody read the high level text or the texts that are geared towards the advanced level students, because then your lower level students will become frustrated. You will become frustrated as a teacher because you'll be all over that student and trying to provide all the support you need for those groups of students while neglecting the rest of the class. So really and truly, I'm going to go in deeply with the differentiation piece review in this webinar as we move forward. But thank you, I appreciate that. The second answer that Dana Foster gave is this: the standards will require me to deviate from text, which is out of date. Really, really true, Dana. What we have, in the current textbooks that we have, they're good, they're solid. You can, I won't even scrap the current textbooks that we have or the current resources that we have. Some of them can still be used. They must be used with, at a certain level of appropriateness. But a lot of the things that we're going to need is something that we don't already have. We have to find texts that are more geared in the context, something that would include some type of mathematics, some text that will probably have some percentages in it and would require students to understand, or some type of text where there's graphs and pictures where students will have to analyze and draw underlying meanings based on what they're seeing. So really, the text is true, it is out of date. And what my suggestion is information is very, very accessible through the internet. So if your classroom is wired or has wireless connection or has connection to the internet, tap on that resource and look for lots of informational text that would be geared towards the interest and academic goals of your students. So hopefully, that answers your question. I have some questions here. I have some responses from Stacy. And according to Stacy, she said, I started using more academic language and informational text. My students must prove how they found their answers. That is so true. I really, really salute you for doing that. Starting early is better than starting late. So if you can do incremental changes to your daily instruction, incorporating academic language, incorporating informational text, and just simply tweaking the way you teach by just asking your students, where did you find that? Where is that answer? Can you support that answer? I guess it's going to go a long way in terms of helping our students become more successful in post ESOL courses. And again, Stacy also added on to her response by strengths. One of the strengths is vocabulary has grown in writing and speech in terms of their answers. That's true. If you do that, if you practice your students to support their answers, of course, they're going to rely on and they're going to have to increase their vocabulary in order to be able to respond and become more familiar with some of the words in both speech and writing. Okay, and I got a follow-up response from Dana, but I wanted to just point out that I wanted to hear from you on how has it been so far in terms of the standards. And I want to hear from those who have not implemented the standards. What's going on? Do you have any questions? Is there any component in the workshop that we can add in the next rounds in terms of content so that we can provide you with all the supports you need so you can start implementing these standards immediately? So I'm going to move on, continue your responses, can continue answering the questions, and I'm going to move on to the next component of this webinar. Okay, so another thing that I wanted to ask, I'm going to add to those two questions, is assessment. So how did your assessment strategies change after you've attended the workshop? I know that Stacy already talked about that. Her oral questioning has changed because now she's already asking them to justify where did you find that answer, or who said that, or where is that on the text. That's really good. And that's one way and one thing that showed to us, or to all of us, that your assessment has slightly changed, because questioning and oral questioning in the classroom is a form of assessment. So I'd like to know, in other types of assessments, how has it changed in your classroom after you've attended the ELP workshop? And then number two, how are you now using the assessment results in your classroom, the results of those assessments that you did? How are you using that in differentiating your instruction or in providing some scaffolding for your students? So please keep those two questions in mind, and if it comes to you have an answer, you can just go ahead and type it in our Q&A box. All right. So I'm going to move on and do, because Miss Dana Foster has dived into differentiated instruction. It's a good thing I have the differentiated instruction, and this might provide a little bit more clarity on my response earlier in terms of your answer. So differentiated instruction, as we have defined it in our previous workshop, previous face-to-face workshop, is your response as a teacher to the diversity, to the variance among various learners in your classroom. So the variance does not only refer to the ability levels of your students. It could be cultures, it could be gender, it could be interest, it could be academic or career goals. So variance is it can happen in many forms. But whatever you do to vary your instruction to meet the need of that variance, to create a best possible learning experience for your students, is differentiated instruction in kind of a nutshell. So I know that the ELP workshop is not a differentiated instruction workshop, but a lot of the things that we have applied and we did in that face-to-face workshop implements differentiated instruction. So I'm going to go over and do a little bit of a review of the different methods of differentiation. This part I did not cover. We did not cover this in the PowerPoint slides in the face-to-face workshop. So I'm just going to go ahead and go over quickly some of these methods of differentiation. You can differentiate the task. So just like I said, so your lower group could be writing 5 sentences, while your higher group can write, let's say, 1 to 2 paragraphs. Or it could be your lower group should just be writing to themselves, whereas your high group is writing a formal letter addressed to someone. So it could be, the task could be differentiated. Grouping can also be differentiated. So you can have groups that are in small groups. Students can be working individually, or students could be working in larger groups, or as a whole class. You can also form groups that are homogeneous, where all your high levels are in one group, and then all your lower level students are in another group. You can also, what I found works best in an ESOL classroom, is if I have heterogeneous grouping of students. Heterogeneous grouping of students works really well because you have that high and then low combination, and you also have that low mid and then high mid student that are mixed in. It makes such a great discourse and discussion among students when you have heterogeneous groups. You can also group them by interests. You can have all the students that have medical backgrounds in one group. You can have all the students that are in the construction or have experience in the construction industry in another group. So that's another way to differentiate grouping. Resources, you can vary resources from low to high Lexile levels. One of the best websites I've found out there that's available is Newsela. Newsela is gonna provide you with content-specific readings, but they are written in various versions according to Lexile levels. So they have level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Lexile levels according to the grade levels or GE levels or ESOL levels of your students, and you can use those to vary the resources your students are doing. Pacing in this is another way or method of differentiation. You can have a student working on a particular assignment with a short amount of time, and you can have your low group working on that particular same assignment, and you just give them a little bit more time to allow for that accommodation. Outcomes can also be different. So a student could, your low-level students could just be writing it on paper, whereas your higher group can, you want to demand a little bit more from them. You want it to be typewritten or typed into Word, or create a PowerPoint with pictures. So the outcomes of a particular assignment or activity or lesson task could be differentiated. Dialogue and scaffolding. I can talk all day about scaffolding, but what I wanted to show you is that page C2, the last page of the English Language Proficiency Standards, by the way, is attached to this webinar. So you can download a PDF copy of the English Language Proficiency Standards. Download it, go to the last page of that document. Page C2 goes into detail. What are the different types of scaffolding that you can provide at various levels of ESOL development? And then lastly, the assessment. The assessment, if your objective and your task can be differentiated, therefore your assessment can be differentiated. So the assessment could be differentiated by task. You can have, you can also differentiate assessment into groups. Nobody says assessment has to be individual. You can do group assessment. You can do whole class assessment. You can do a quick thumbs up, thumbs out. That in itself is already an assessment. So assessment can vary in different levels. You get various information levels of of information on student proficiency for different types of assessment, but there are nonetheless assessment methods. Our ultimate goal for assessment is to find out if the students are learning the material or not. So that's pretty much my 2 cents on the methods of differentiation. So I'm going to post the next 2 questions for you to think about, and then start answering on and typing them up into our Q&A tab. But the next question is, how did the ELP Standards workshop help you in differentiating your instruction for your students? Did you gain any good ideas? Like, oh, I tried this out from Phil's workshop. Phil talked about it. Or I got this from Ron, and Ron talked about this particular strategy in great detail, and I've applied it and it really works. Or you can just tell us, oh, it didn't work quite as well, I need some help. So let us know what how that goes, and then type it on the Q&A, and we'll try our best to answer all your questions in the amount of time we have left. And then lastly, if you have any general questions or comments with regards to differentiation per se, and just like the one that Ms. Foster raised, please please tell us about it. So I'm gonna read through some of the comments here that I have okay, I have a comment from Miss Martinez. It would be great, according to Ms. Martinez, it would be great if you, meaning us, the panelists, could provide a list of internet resources, such as the great one provided by Stacy, and some of these titles and publishers for textbook that can be used for differentiated instructions. For example, Venture's multi-level workbook. Yes, there are a ton of material already. If differentiation is what you're looking for, differentiation is not new. So if your differentiation is what you're looking for, there is a ton, and you don't have to actually purchase something to get some really cool differentiated material. You can go to Pinterest and just type differentiated instruction for English language learners. And you will get a slew of, more than you can ever digest in one sitting, a slew of things that teachers have done with samples and sometimes even videos of how they've differentiated instruction in class. Now, you may have a limited resource in terms of ones where you have adults in there, but differentiate, you can always tweak something that works for children, for K-12, and tweak it so that it will meet the needs and match the ones for the adults. So what I really can suggest to you is the English Language Proficiency Standards book itself, the report in itself, is filled with samples, teacher examples of vignettes, or how other teachers have differentiated their instruction. And then also it's got the list of scaffolding and scaffolding techniques that is suggested at the various levels of ESOL development. So try to refer to that. That in itself is a good starting point for differentiated materials. Musella is another one. In one of the workshops that I've conducted in Orlando, a teacher raved about readworks.com. Try that, and they have a lot of differentiated material there. You don't have to purchase them. They're all for free. Okay. I've got some comments here, but not really something. And I know Phil and June are answering some of your questions in the background, and you're also seeing their responses because it's directed to all participants. So great. Thank you, Phil and June, for answering some of these questions that our participants are posing. I'm very happy that there's so much going on in this webinar. So I'm going to cap off this webinar by the last things I want to cover in this, and which is the effectiveness, which is the review of the lesson planning. I just want to quickly review the lesson planning stages. So I'm going to go back to step 1. Pick your college and career readiness standards. So you have to start with the college and career readiness standards. I also attached this college and career readiness standards report into the handouts page of this webinar for you to download and print on demand. Step 2, once you have found your CCR standard, correlate the standard with the English language proficiency standard with this red book that we're calling, or the so-called red book. And specifically that correlations page that we marked and tabbed during the face-to-face workshop will tell you which English language proficiency standard correlate with particular college and career readiness standards. Just like I said, not every single standard in the college and career readiness standards are aligned or have a counterpart to the English language proficiency standard. They're not supposed to be in one-to-one alignment. They're just supposed to be corresponding. And then next step, once you get that, you go to that particular standard, figure out the level of your the students that you teach. And then in this particular example, let's just say we teach levels 1 and 2. So those are the skills and the proficiencies that we need to be focusing on when designing the lesson. So now that we have those standards, then we move on to writing the lesson plan. And we provided you in the face-to-face workshop a really neat teacher-friendly, user-friendly, I would even say student-friendly version of a lesson plan where it forces the teacher to already differentiate the objectives and the evaluation strategies, and including the lesson activities according to the various levels of your students. So this is the second page of that, where you're differentiating the practice part between your low level and high level. And you don't always have to differentiate by 2. By all means, if you have more time, go ahead and differentiate more. You can divide your class into more groups. If you want to differentiate to all 4 levels that you teach, yes, do that. But I'm just going to tell you it might be time consuming if you have to do that. So what we suggest is for teachers to work smarter, not harder. And then I just wanted to point out that this is the scaffolding and supports page that I was referring to, the last page of that English language proficiency standards report. And then we also introduced a teaching strategy checklist. The teaching strategy checklist is a really neat tool for you to check back and say, after you've done the activity, check back. Do a yes or no checklist. Is it student-centered? Is it collaborative? Is it whole language? Is it learner-independent oriented, cyclical, critical thinking based, or performance based? Based on that, and we align those teaching strategy checklists with the 10 guiding principles that we introduce in the face-to-face workshop. So really use this checklist to kind of gauge whether it's working or not. And then I'm going to turn it over to June Rawl to talk about some if-day resources that we have for you. And I'm going to be fading in the background answering your Q&A on the chat bar. June?
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Phil. Just a quick update, you know that all the materials are in your ELP Day portal, so that's where you have the PDF and the Word copies for those of you who have participated in the workshop. So there's one more regional training that's coming up this Friday in Palm Beach County if you want to go. Check out the new Grab and Go videos. They're really great videos. I think you're going to really find that you can use in your classroom. Remember the plethora of lesson plans that are out there, and even the career exploration guides for ESOL. So check that out. And also there's math and science that's coming up for the social studies and the science. So with that, I think our time is up, and I just want to thank all of you. I think, Ron, you have an evaluation that you want to talk about?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much, June, for sharing us that information. The next page, I would like to really hear what you think about that. We're going to continue to answer your question. Joseph is going to send me the rest of the questions that we archived in this webinar, and then we're going to be emailing you directly or even calling you if we have time, and providing you with some feedback, because we don't want to leave you left out to dry once we, when we've done these webinars and workshops. So the next page is a Survey Monkey. If you've downloaded the PowerPoint presentation, please go to this link. I'd like to know what you think and how we can further improve the workshop, the webinar for you. And then, just like I said, I will be answering your questions. The ones that I have not answered or Phil has not answered, we'll answer them for you. Thank you very much for participating in this webinar.